This is part 2 of Purification of the Body, and the other day I went through the 4 branches of killing and stealing, and I'll return now and finish up with sexual misconduct. So unwise sexual behavior is another term for this, and there's 4 types of this. One is with an improper person, the second one is in an improper way, the third one is in an improper place and at an improper time. But the chief principal one is having some kind of relationship, sexual behavior, with someone who's already in a relationship. So that's usually called adultery. So that's the principal thing to avoid, because it causes a lot of pain and confusion in people's lives, as we've seen. So to go through the 4 branches of sexual misconduct, the object is someone who is celibate, in custody of their parents, someone related to you, even your own partner. And then it's also inappropriate if this happens in front of holy images or on days when you've taken precepts. The complete intention is you have sex with the person you're intending to. There's recognition of the person and there's the intention to do it. The motivation is usually attachment. However, in the case of rape, it's likely anger, but that's also mixed in with ignorance. The action is the actual meeting of the organs, and the culmination of the action is if we take delight in the experience. So that's that. And then I thought I'd move on today to the karmic results of each of these actions of the body, and then I'll make my reason about why this is important. So in general, the fruitional result of any non-virtuous action is rebirth in one of the lower realms. And the second type of result is similar to the cause. So, for example, if we kill someone, then we are going to be killed. The corresponding result of killing is to have a short life and to suffer from many sicknesses and to be killed. The environmental result of killing is that food, drink, and medicine that would normally nourish us and sustain us and prolong our life is ineffective, and what's more, the food will make us sick and it shortens our life. And premature death is always the result of killing. In the case of stealing, the corresponding result is to live in poverty. Whatever property that we have must be shared with others, and nothing is our own. That's quite interesting. The environmental result of stealing is that, and this is according to the Lam Rim, so you can interpret this according to what you do in your life. Their example is that fruit and crops do very poorly. So if you're a farmer, the yield is small and the fruit is blemished. It will rot quickly and the meat of the fruit is missing. The area that we live in, if we are stealing, will be plagued by drought or excessive rain. Fruits will dry out before it can be harvested, or plants will not produce any fruit at all. And with sexual misconduct, the corresponding result is to have our own partner be unfaithful, they're loyal to someone else, or they're very difficult to get along with. And the environmental result of sexual misconduct is to be born in an unclean place full of excrement and urine, littered with filth and mud and slime, and smells like a sewer. And the people who you live with or who are around you have a bad character, are crude and untrustworthy. So those are pretty sobering results. So when I went through the Vajrasattva practice on the 3-month retreat, when I got to the regret part and I'd gone through all of those things, what I really focused on was the harm I caused others, and I think you all are doing that. And not guilt. I would see when it would tip into guilt, but I really focused on the harm that I caused and all of that, and felt, very grievous about that. And then I also had this at first, a panicky fear about where I was headed if these things weren't purified. So this was going to be a birth in a hell realm of some kind. And initially that scared the heck out of me, and I was very panicky. And later on that just sort of grew in time through hearing teachings about the fact that, this is wisdom fear coming up. But then about 3 weeks ago, I was listening to some of Venerable's talks on the Vajrasattva practice that she gave at Vajrapani. And quite often when I hear her teachings, they're done so clearly, my mind just goes, yes, of course. Yes, of course. And I hear it and I go, yes, of course, of course. And then about 2 days after listening to this one teaching, I went, oh, oh. And it was the same feeling I had when I was in my early 20s, and I was talking with my uncle one day, who's a doctor, and he was saying, well, you know, you don't die of old age. And it was like a bomb had gone off in my head. Of course I knew that. I mean, my grandmother died when I was 10. And I knew that people were dying at different ages, but when he said it like that, we don't die of old age, it suddenly hit me that I could die at any moment. And it just blew my mind apart. And so I'm going to read to you what I heard the other day that blew my mind apart. And you'll probably think, well, yes, I knew that already. It's too bad you're only learning that now, but maybe you'll hear it in a different way too. Okay, so she says, in Western cultures, when we think of a terrible negativity, why do we think of it as terrible? Well, the main reason is because we harmed somebody else. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking the whole time. Yes, of course. But in Buddhism, these negativities are terrible because we will experience the karmic result in a lower rebirth. Even if we're born human, the things that will happen to us, as you just heard, the environment we're born in, all of that, the habits that we'll have will just carry on in these miserable circumstances. So they're terrible because of the suffering that's going to befall us. What we're usually not thinking is, I'm regretting them because I'm going to have negative consequences in the future. We're usually not thinking that. I haven't been. So she goes on to suggest, why does this happen? Why do a lot of us come to that conclusion? And she says that maybe one reason is that we talk about rebirth, but maybe we don't really believe it. And then I thought more about this, and I thought, well, maybe it's also talking about karma and not really believing that these karmic results will happen to me. The positive ones, yes. The negative ones, nah. So that was interesting. And she also said that in our culture, of course, things are negative because we've harmed somebody else. That's appropriate. And to have huge compassion for the people that we've harmed. And I'm sure that you're all doing that as well as feeling regret. Then this is the part, okay, you ready? The harm I've done to others, that is over. The harm that is going to befall me hasn't happened yet. So I can prevent that harm. I can't prevent the harm that has already happened to others. But I can prevent the harm that is going to happen to me because of my negative actions. And so the regret is coming from that space as a way of actively preventing harm. Now that's what blew my mind apart, as a new way of looking at, all of these things. And not only does it blow your mind apart, it also opens your heart. So that was very cool. So I was very happy to discover this at my great age. So as you continue in your purification, you can just rejoice now that you know this practice, that we're getting rid of these things that are creating obstacles in our spiritual practice, and they're getting in the way of us getting closer to enlightenment so that we can be, of benefit to all sentient beings one day. And then I'd like to share with you two things in closing. This is a very compelling quote that Geshe Sopa talks about in his Lamrim commentary. And he encourages us by saying this: do not think that small virtuous actions will not help you because they're too small. The power of habitual action is addressed in this stanza from the Garland of Birth Stories. By performing virtuous or non-virtuous actions habitually, it becomes the nature of a person, so that in future lives, with intending it, they continue to do them as if in a dream. Now, this last little gift is, so in your break time, when you're needing something virtuous to do, the opposite of killing is saving lives. And so, I'm going to show you something called an insectifunger. Danny? Insectifunger? Insectifinger. The company that makes it is called Snappy. And John is going to do some fancy film work now. I'm going to give you a demonstration of how to save lives with this instrument. So here's the insect. It's a very lovely instrument. So you gently place it over the insect whose life you're going to save. Now around here what happens is Karuna is usually batting around insects downstairs. So not only are we saving the insect's life, we're saving Karuna, the little kitty, from future rebirths in the hell realm. So, and then you dedicate all that merit, of course. So you put this over top of the insect. This slides. You have to do this gently because you don't want to trap the insect and squeeze it to death. And there you have it. And then you take it out and put it somewhere. Well, it's snowing today, so you wouldn't want to do that. But you put the insect somewhere safe. And then you rejoice. And rejoice and rejoice. So thank you, Dani. Enjoy your retreat.